The teenage years are supposed to be when we start discovering ourselves, doing crazy things, and basically learning what our private parts are for. I spent most of my teenage years depressed and alone, culminating in 2 years of drug addiction and washing out of the Army. And compared to some of our people today, it's possible I got the good end of the stick.
Chicago's outskirts, April 5th. The Cook County warehouse and impound yard. It had been the center of considerable controversy. One of Chicago's largest cemeteries, the Hills of Lethe, had been sold to a real estate developer who was going to erect condominiums. The former occupants of Hills of Lethe had to be moved. In spite of the care that was taken, there were some mistakes and oversights. In one case, the oversight was very small, but it blossomed into a flower of evil.
Why is there a bucket inside a coffin, I hear you ask? You don't really expect the answer this early, do you?
10:45 p.m. Mrs. Rita Baker, widowed, age 62, had lived a hard, spare life and had become a hopeless insomniac. But on the night of February 5th, she had managed to doze off for a while.
Who do you tell about something like that? If it's me, the answer is probably nobody. Mrs. Baker will tell the police.
In fact, when police arrived, they agreed the 1956 model BSA motorcycle had been stolen. Item, the police never did answer how a 20-year-old motorcycle, rusted and long since drained of gas and oil, had roared out into the chill Cicero night.
Without opening the door, no less. We're at a taxi cab garage where driver Joe Morton is wrapping up for the day. And I do mean wrapping up. The headless getup on that rider is about as lame as it gets, but I suppose there's only so much you can do with practical effects. Still, for a functioning TV show with a budget for effects, that looks like a costume. It's not even a little bit convincing, but it's what we have to work with. After Mac from It's About Time convinced the Air Force to leave his cave family friends alone, he retired from astronauting and took this job because he felt he could use a little less excitement in his life. Shortly after this, he decided sitting on top of a giant rocket that could explode any moment was a lot less strenuous. For perhaps the first time in his not exactly illustrious career, Carl realizes what's coming. Larry Linville, whom we've seen many times, is today's police captain, and he's going to keep a lid on this. He just got promoted to captain, and he's determined to take a much harsher approach to the press than those who have come before him.
There'll be no pictures until I say so, for one thing.
What?
I saw you flashing over there a few minutes ago.
You can't get me on that rap.
Give me the film, Kolchak.
This is the way I make my living. This is part and parcel of the free flow of information.
Give me the film.
You realize, of course, that this goes directly against the First and the Fourth Amendment. Like, I forgot to load the camera. You know, I do that more and more as I grow older.
Well, fortunately for all of us, Kolchak, you're your own worst enemy.
If you're confused, it used to be that you had to put this stuff called film into a camera to take pictures. It was kind of like changing the memory card, except it took longer and the film wasn't reusable.
Spiral. The whole head. It was gone.
gone.
Head gone? Was the victim beheaded?
Don't mess with me, Kolchak. I'm the youngest captain on the force, and I'm going to be the best.
Yeah, well, I believe that. I believe that. If you don't die from hypertension first, learn to relax, will you? But did the killer ride a motorcycle or motorbike?
No comment.
Thank you. Did you get a make on it?
The Founding Fathers didn't give you permission to park at the scene of an investigation. You... I told you things would be different.
He was well established as Frank Burns on MASH by now, so playing this guy wasn't much of a challenge. Carl is off to the morgue to see a pal of his.
Well, if it isn't the third runner-up in the Spike Jones dress-alike contest.
And a fond hello to you, too, Neil. The Joe Morton cab driver.
First, let's not forget my scholarship fund.
You still want to be a beautician, huh? Mm-hmm. Want to give your customers the creeps knowing what those clammy hands of yours have touched?
My hands aren't clammy.
If he has trouble finding a job after he graduates, he could combine his beautician skills with this job and be a mortician like Bruce Willis in Death Becomes Her.
Want my expert opinion?
Yeah.
A sword did that.
A sword? Come on, it looks like a surgical incision.
That's cleaner, better than most of the work we do here. Boy, look at Morton's hair. Look at that oil. The only thing missing is the croutons.
I think he did that on purpose just to watch Carl's reaction. I would. But there's more. Morton was wearing a bulletproof vest.
Personal effects. Mr. Morton was struck in the back before he caught the decapitating blow.
That chopped his head off with a sword.
Want some more of my expert opinion?
Again, a sword did that. Armed with the pictures that Captain Jonas didn't confiscate, his next step is to track down the bike.
We're talking about that little doll over here.
No,
right
long
there.
before we started talking about this little dog, we were talking about these motorcycle tracks. Now, what kind of a tire made those tracks?
Let me see. That's a Johansson Road Monarch 560 by 18. Yes. Now, no, here's a model, an NBH Model 80 made in Germany.
He thought getting information out of Neil was expensive.
Very, very conservative. Just a thing for a journalist like yourself.
Hey, Mr. Brest, now, what kind of a bike could I find these tires?
Now, hold on, Mr. Kolchak, will you? Now, you're a reporter, and your function in life is to ask questions, right?
That's right.
Well, since I'm a motorcycle dealer, isn't it fair that it's my function in life to sell you a motorcycle, especially since I own this store?
Fair point, though I see Carl Kolchak lasting about 2 days on a motorcycle before he crashes and destroys his hat.
You'd find those tires on an antique bike. They haven't made those tires in over 20 years. The Johansson Tire Company went down the tube.
That's a joke, isn't it?
Yeah, motorcycle.
You are serious, aren't you? I mean, come on, this isn't an old tire. It's brand new. It's in perfect shape.
I know it's cherry, but I'm telling you the fact. Those tires were made for the old BSA, the Beezers. And not one has hit the asphalt since the 50s. That tire was very popular with the bike gangs when Ike was in the White House.
What, 20 years ago?
The Jokers and the Bishop, they were the two outlaw biking clubs. They were the best.
As so often happens, the gang members grew up and the gangs disbanded. They were a bunch of little hellions in their day, but that day is long gone.
Now, this Matsuda is just the bike for you, sir.
Jokers and the Bishops.
Matsuda made planes during the war. Made good ones. I was a Navy flyer. It just so happens that I was shot down in flames over Tarawa by a Matsuda 140 Tiger Shark. I was in the VA for a year. I couldn't walk. But they make darn good bikes.
You're watching true acting genius in action. That sudden change in tone could give a person a whiplash, and it's something Jim Backus excelled at. He's one of the few people in the acting field who literally did it all. Stage, then radio, then movies, television, and along the way he also added animation. In 1949 he became the voice of Mr. Magoo and kept us laughing at the little fella for decades. He proved his dramatic skills as James Dean's father in Rebel Without a Cause, and of course there's Gilligan's Island. When he was doing radio, he created Hubert Updike III, a rich snob who became the basis for Thurston Howell III. He even had a hit record in 1959 called What was it called?
It's a cozy table, isn't it?
And champagne, my dear.
Delicious.
Oh, right, champagne. No, that's not it. Delicious, that's what it was called. Stage, radio, movies, music, television, animation. He was one of those rare individuals who wouldn't be caged.
April 6th, 8:45 p.m. Studs Spake, real name Henry Barlow Spake, was making a half-hearted attempt at earning an honest living. Within minutes, his only concern became living, period.
When he comes down from there, our headless horsepowerman comes after him, but he manages to shinny back up the pole just in time. Dude, I don't care how sharp your sword is, it's gonna take more than one hit to bring that down. He speeds off into the night and Studs is safe for the moment. Emphasis on for the moment, so I'd better do this while I know his head is still attached to his neck. His real name is Art Matrano, and he did dramatic roles like this, he did comedic roles, and he did stand-up comedy. He's best known for doing the world's worst magic acts like this. And he always sang that ridiculous little tune while he was doing things like making his fingers jump from one hand to the other. You couldn't help but laugh because the whole thing was just so stupid. And beyond that, a lot of people know him as Captain Mauser in the Police Academy movies. Right now, he just wants to avoid being decapitated. Meanwhile, the cab dispatcher, Norman Cahill, has vanished. Or so the police thought. They didn't reckon with Miss Emily's powers of detection. He's in a psych ward against his will. Posing as a police sketch artist, Kolchak slips into his room.
It's about time you got here, Uncle Ned.
Well, I'm terribly sorry I was late, nephew.
Well, you should be.
Look, that spider's gonna drop on you. That was no spider. That was my wife.
Yeah, I can understand that.
If his wife has 8 legs and 8 eyes, no wonder he's in here. We can see that Cahill is strapped down.
But now let's just go through it very carefully, point by point, so we get all of our facts straight.
All right. This guy, this thing went after Joe Morton and killed him. He was riding the same kind of bike that Joe Morton used to ride years ago. He told us about it.
Wait, you mean Joe Morton was a bike rider?
Yeah.
When? Was he a member of a bike club?
Mr. Van Gogh. Go.
He was so close. Let's go pump Jonas for some more information.
Save the wear and tear in my ears. I'm releasing no information on the Morton homicide, period.
He may need to pump a little harder than he thought.
I just wanted to find out if you'd notified the board of directors.
What board of directors?
Morton Mining and Manufacture. You're not kidding. You don't know. You don't know that Joseph Morton is an heir to that whole copper dynasty?
What?
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Well, I got an inside tip, and then I had our financial editor check it out, and it's true. Joseph Morton was in line to inherit the whole entire Morton's holding company, about 10, 12 corporations out in Kanab, Utah.
That loser wasn't about to inherit anything but a cab driver's fat behind. He was a young punk from Cicero, had a yellow sheet as long as your arm, a nobody.
There's something Kolchak didn't know before. Keep pumping.
He was worth $8 million. That's somebody. Morton ran away from home when he was about 14 years old, lived with a couple in Cicero. But the Morton family knew where he was all the time.
And they let him join the Jokers, a punk bike gang, boozing, girls, breaking store windows, huh? In 1956 alone, Morton was busted 9 times. Drunk and disorderly, aggravated assault, grand theft auto. copper air, my Yankee.
Okay, all right. Captain Jonas, you just better check it out for yourself. I mean, it's your neck. There's old money there, society people involved.
Sit down.
He told you he's not releasing any information, and you're going to sit right there until you get all of it, young man.
Henry Spake, a.k.a. Studs, head of the Jokers, stabbed a gym teacher at 16. That was Morton's best friend. Spake is still a biker. Even worse now, he runs the Devil's Advocates, loves to run tour buses off the road. Now, is that the kind of society chum the Morton family picked for their son, huh?
Most families don't pick their children. It's like a gumball machine. You put your valuables in and take whatever pops out. Carl spins a story about how Joe was estranged from his father, but his mother quietly sent him money to keep him afloat until she died last year.
And Mom let him marry Lila Polito, huh? High school dropout. Lila and her sister Carl used to ride with the Jokers. Real debutantes, those two.
Oh, well, Lila I knew about, but not Debbie.
Coral.
Coral. You know, you really got a lot of information there, Captain. You've really done your homework.
I don't miss much.
That was true beauty. Lila is at Joe's funeral. So is Studs.
All right. Take it easy, huh? Don't worry about nothing. I'm gonna take care of it. Come on.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh, Mr. Spake, may we speak?
How'd you know my name?
Well, it's embroidered right there on your tunic.
We'll avoid the fact that his back was turned when Kolchak addressed him.
It says Studs. It says nothing about Mr. Spade.
Oh no, but I knew who you were. I mean, you're very famous.
Oh, yeah?
Yes. My name's Kolchak. I make documentaries.
The great thing about telling people like these guys that you make documentaries, you can pull a couple of names out of your imagination and they'll believe you because they don't watch documentaries. Too many big words. Although some of them do occasionally have some whatchamajiggles.
What I'd like to do, you see, is to make a film showing the contrast between bike clubs of today and bike clubs of the 50s, you see. Now, Joe Morton was a friend of yours, and he gave up on bike.
Oh, he gave up on everything. For a pot belly and a TV set. He got old. He's very off the wall.
They all get old. Old men.
Gentlemen. Mr. Morton, Joe was killed by someone riding a bike, a 20-year-old bike. Now, I find that very interesting.
We aren't mentioning that he had a sword and didn't have a head.
I mean, film me, please. That is.
You want some interesting shots?
Yeah.
You should have filmed the old geek here last night.
In Studs' case, we don't need to mention those things because he already saw them. The others are making fun of him.
He was a very naughty boy when he was a kid. So now he's going all wiggy about seeing goblins that don't stay buried. Just today, he goes, "Kaka, kaka, kaka," and he makes us come out to this old cemetery with him. I think he's afraid he can.
Oh?
He buried something out there he shouldn't have. A long time ago.
Should have.
But all the big man found was an open hole.
Surprise, it's not a cemetery anymore, and the bodies are in a warehouse awaiting relocation. They get into an argument, and Lila throws them all out.
Mrs. Morton, my name's Carl Kolchak. I'm with the INS, that's the Independent News Service.
How do you do?
I'm terribly sorry about your husband and also about this scene that's created.
Oh, they're a bunch of animals. It's so hard to believe they're part of my past.
Yeah, well, when people are young, they do crazy things. I remember I used to swallow goldfish.
Believe it or not, this was a thing. It started in the 1930s, nobody's sure how or who because there are conflicting stories. But through the 30s and well into the 50s, goldfish gulping contests popped up all over the place, mostly on university campuses because college students will try anything. Before long, there was a need to standardize the rules, and some folks formed the International Goldfish Gulping Association, or, I cannot say this with a straight face, IGA. No, nothing that classy. Almost immediately, another organization formed to oppose the practice because it was cruel to the fish. Eventually, it just sort of faded out. Every so often, somebody pops up trying to revive it, but it hasn't caught on again the way it did then. Most people and all goldfish are okay with that.
Oh, no, I did. Matter of fact, I'm still considering doing it. The price of food these days.
Well, crazy things are one thing, but I got into something else, you know, me and my sister Coral. We still can't believe it.
He mentions riding with the Jokers, and she's visibly frightened.
Can you tell me who might have killed your husband, or who might have wanted to kill your husband? Somebody on a cycle 20 years old?
No. My sister Coral and me and my Joe got out of that a long, long time ago.
You get the feeling she knows who it is, but she's not about to tell him.
Well, some of Spake's friends, I guess you could call them that, said something about things that won't stay buried. Now, could they have been talking about a killer without a head?
What? Huh?
A killer without a head.
Well, they're all on drugs. I'm not. Who knows what they're talking about? I don't know what's wrong with you either.
The lady protests too much, methinks.
She starts weeping uncontrollably, and it's time for Kolchak to leave. He waits until nightfall and heads for the warehouse those guys mentioned. Looks like somebody else had the same idea. We can probably guess who. When Jesse White was the Maytag repairman, he used to complain about being lonely and having nothing to do. I don't see this job being much more interesting, but at least he's figured out a way to cope with it. Not the best way, but a way. And he's not the one who broke the lock. I think we can assume he has a key. Studs is way more focused on finding what he's looking for than he is on being quiet or not getting caught.
Here. What do you think you're doing here? This here's county property. It's posted. Now, you just get your hands up and just stay right where you're at. Oh, you gonna shoot me over there? Huh? I'll call the police. Take off for a dance on your head. Don't move it. Call the police.
Did the city give this guy any training at all? This is not how you hold that thing. And here at the channel, we've known for years that getting within the other guy's reach does not turn out well. Studs won't hurt him, and our man will call the police. If he had had any sense, he would have stayed down there behind those pallets and stuff instead of standing up and saying, "Looky here, I'm a target." As we might say in Latin, sic transit studs. The watchman saw it all, and Carl managed to snap a picture or two. But here come the police, which probably means Captain Jonas and his attendant attitude. So one time in his life, Kolchak will do the smart thing and slip out unnoticed. And if those cops are half smart, they'll stay in the car.
Excuse me, Tony. Carl, you know I have an ulcer problem, don't you? Yeah. Now, here you are stealing things out of the Chronicle file. Now, is that your idea of Be Kind to Tony Week? Now, what are you doing here? What is this?
Don't ask, Tony. Don't ask. I mean, for the sake of your duodenum, don't ask. It'll only upset you.
Tony has an ulcer, and he's going bonkers watching everybody else in the office eat regular food while he has to eat bland paste and guzzle milk of magnesia. But it's funny what you can get used to. I was a major salt fiend all my life. I would add salt to stuff that was already pre-salted. Then I had a heart attack, and my cardiologist told me if I want to live to 150 like I say I do, cut out all that salt. I'm going to tell you something. Try it for 2 weeks. 3 years later, I'm still amazed at how many different flavors my food has. I never knew it because I covered it all up with salt. Today, if I come upon something that's salted the way I used to do it, I find the food almost inedible. The trick is not to resist the change. If you know it's going to make your life better because you're healthier or because you're alive, take it from Irving. Just go with it.
Here's a Kolchak special. You chop the head off.
I don't chop the head off any pictures I do, for God's sake. Look, see? The top of the shoulders there, on the top of the photograph. See the blank space in there? I mean, that guy's head was chopped off 20 years ago.
Oh, if you're so interested in beheadings and such, there's a guillotine exhibition of the French Reign of Terror down at the Museum of Science and Industry.
That's not a bad idea. Experts on the Reign of Terror can probably tell him a lot of the lore surrounding beheading. And he just found what he was looking for in that book.
August 22nd, 1956. The decapitated body of Harold Baker, 20, of Cicero, was found today on Route 15 outside Cicero. Baker, also known as the Swordman Baker, was a known member of the Bishops, a local motorcycle club. The man's head was not found in the vicinity of the body.
The Bishops were the gang that had a rivalry going with the Jokers, and he was known for carrying a sword. Let's go talk to those French Revolution guys.
Oh, there was some nonsense about burying the executed in common graves. Well, with careless grave diggers and what have you, the heads and the bodies were often separated, sent to different locations.
Oh, you mean like what happens to luggage out of the airport?
Exactly. Happened to me when I flew into Chicago.
It happens all the time here. It's terrible. What happened to those headless bodies?
Oh, legend has it that headless specters, corpses, were seen wandering the streets of Paris, attempting to wreak revenge on those that had decapitated them.
I have not been able to confirm this. There are a couple of ghost stories recorded, but nothing like what he describes. If these stories are really out there, they're only passed around by word of mouth and haven't made it into any literature except the occasional novel.
Well, what did the people of Paris do about these wandering corpses?
A program was instituted to rebury the heads with the bodies and to make sure that future burials were done with care.
And that stopped the dead from walking, right?
Legend would have us believe it did.
Remember that bucket that we saw go rolling away at the beginning? That's what Studs was looking for. He had just found it when our biker found him, and now we have a fair idea what's in it. Lila's sister Coral is next. We didn't even get to meet her, but she nevertheless fulfilled her purpose in life to be a plot device.
You!
Mrs. Morton, however far you're going, it's not going to be far enough.
Get out of my house! Get out of here!
I will, just as soon as you tell me about Harold Sword Baker.
How do you know his name?
Oh, I know all about Harold Swordman. Now, you tell me who killed him, how he was murdered, and who buried him.
She says it was an accident. Nobody murdered anybody. It was a horrible accident, that's all.
What? An accident? You mean you jokers decapitated Baker accidentally?
Well, not all of us jokers. My sister and I only watched.
Well, shucks, that makes it okay then.
Studs and Joe and Turk Pelletier set up this booby trap just to knock Swordman off his bike. Only Studs, that idiot, set his in too high.
And Baker lost his head.
I...
Who's Turk Pelletier?
Oh, one of the gang, my sister's boyfriend. Oh, he was one of our gang. Oh, you see, Turk was the first one who was murdered by the headless rider 19 years ago.
There's no record of his death because they gathered up his corpse and his head and buried him out in the boonies someplace. And apparently nobody beyond the gang noticed. That's just sad.
Well, you see, Turk used to carry around Swordman Baker's head in a canister, sort of like a trophy.
A trophy of what? Studs' screw-up? Sounds like there's a good reason he was the first one.
Oh, those were the days.
Yeah, those were some days, all right. Listen, who figured out they had to put together Baker's head and body in order to free his spirit?
Studs.
Studs, the bright one.
Right. Studs went to the cemetery and he found the coffin and he stuck the canister inside of the coffin and then everything was fine.
Yeah, until they dug up the old cemetery.
And we all heard the sound of that motorcycle engine outside. It's getting louder.
Will you get it?
Sure.
Aren't you ever at your typewriter? Mrs. Morton, I'd like you to come with me, please.
What? Why?
Well, for your own protection.
This guy seems to think he's with Hitler's SS or the KGB or some other totalitarian police outfit because he does like to throw his weight around. He has a terrified woman who just lost her husband, her sister, and an old friend, and he's barking orders at her like a drill sergeant. He wants to ask her about Baker's death, too.
That's old news. Today, Baker's head is lying out in a county warehouse somewhere. I mean, that's what Spake was doing out there, trying to put the body and the head together.
Well, everyone at headquarters has known for some time, Kolchak, that you've been out to lunch.
Okay, you explain what he was doing there. He's too busy trying to intimidate Lila.
Now, there's nothing to worry about, nothing to be afraid of, Mrs. Morton. Sure, some biker has taken it into his head for some reason to avenge Baker's death. Now, it's weird, and probably drug-induced.
And he has a costume. There is no costume, and he certainly hasn't taken it into his head because there is no head. Baker's head is lying somewhere out in the county warehouse. Now, if you have any brains, you can go out there and put it back together again with the body.
And you're telling me that I should go into a barn of bones and find someone's skull and then pin the head on the stump?
Right.
Is that what you think police do?
I've given up trying to figure out what police do. All I know is what has to be done.
We have a fair idea what police do. It's you we're not too sure about. The previous guard went back to servicing washing machines. Funny thing, all the years he did that, not one severed head. Go figure. Kolchak makes a little noise and that guard is out of here, so Carl can continue his search unmolested. This can't be good. He needs to find the head, quick. Not the best looking fellow we've ever encountered, but not the worst either.
Oh, no, wait a minute, I have nothing to do with it!
You're holding his head. That makes you fair game. And since Baker's body isn't in the coffin, putting his head in there won't do the trick. So now what? That was the most perfect throw ever. Look how perfectly that throw reattached the skull to the rest of him. You don't see accuracy like that anymore. All that's left is for our youngest captain on the force to show up and try to invent a rational explanation for all this.
Vincenzo refused to even discuss publishing my story, didn't even look at the pictures. But the headless rider is at rest now. All the bones are together in one place, in one coffin. And as for those members of the Joker's Motorcycle Club, I mean those who are left, of course, well, maybe they've suffered enough. 3 of them died violently.
I assume we took appropriate care so none of them will be back.
And the others will carry the nightmare of the headless rider with them to their silent graves.
And incidentally, so will Captain Jonas, formerly of homicide, now Sergeant Jonas of traffic control. You see, he's in charge of towing away parked cars.
He already proved he's efficient at that when he had Kolchak's car towed. Nobody realized that he had already reached his level of incompetence there, so promoting him to captain was a violation of the Peter Principle. Doing that never turns out well. Today's police captain. Today's police captain. As long... Go for crying out loud. Really? Hey, as long... Go for... No, that's not correct. Okay. You pup... To keep him floating. Keep him float. I can say this. International Goldfish Man. I was afraid I might not be able to get through this.